Now, I am delighted to introduce you to Matthew Kaufman, who leads a data reporting project at the Solutions Journalism Network. Now, the network basically helps newsrooms to find solutions-oriented stories. And Matthew in particular is helping people look for positive deviants. Now, I think I got described once, Vera, as a positive deviant, but I don't think that's what Matthew is talking about. These are outliers in data that might point to places or programs that are successfully responding to social problems. So welcome, Matthew. This sounds fascinating. So I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Great. And thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. It is great to be here. As you heard earlier, for those of you who were on earlier, it's Thanksgiving here in the United States, a holiday that's mostly just an excuse for us Americans to overeat, as we're wont to do, but also a day to give thanks. And I'm thankful today that there are terrific data journalists around the world who presented earlier and are joining this presentation. So thanks to all of you for being here. As Adam mentioned, my name is Matt Kaufman. I am a longtime newspaper reporter. That's sort of my background. Worked on the investigative desk for the Hartford Courant. It's the oldest paper in America. Did a fair amount of data journalism as well. And am now doing a data project for the Solutions Journalism Network. So I want to talk a little bit about what solutions journalism is and why I think it's worth pursuing, and how it partners particularly well with data journalism. But first, I want to ground this discussion in kind of a perspective that I had in my entire career, really, in journalism. And this, someone else at Solutions Journalism Network had built this slide, and I sort of adapted it because it really sort of rang true with me. This idea of our profession's theory of change, at least according to us, is that we sort of shine a spotlight on problems. We expose things, and then that we count on as being enough to spur reform, that other people will take over from there, but not us, because we don't want to be seen as advocates. We don't want to pick sides. We don't want to be seen as picking winners. It's just sort of not really our role, and so we put it out there and hope that others kind of spur action. And I've found out sort of almost by accident, really late in my career, that there can be something of a middle ground there, and discovered this almost by accident. I was at a conference, a journalism conference, and someone from the Solutions Journalism Network was on a presentation and was making this pitch to kind of go beyond deep reporting on problems to engage in equally deep, reporting on responses to those problems, with an eye toward identifying places or policies that were demonstrably making a difference, that had real evidence behind them. And I was 100% skeptical. It sounded too much like advocacy to me. And I chatted with her after the presentation, and she sort of explained how it can have kind of the same, rigor and depth of traditional reporting. And I found it kind of persuasive and eye-opening. So let me see if I can do a little eye-opening here today and see if it's the sort of things that you think is valuable to add to your reporting toolbox. And let me start kind of with a basic definition of solutions reporting. You can see it here. Solutions journalism, rigorous and compelling reporting about responses to social problems, investigates and explains in a critical and clear-eyed way examples of people working towards solutions. I've always liked this sort of brief explanation from one of our co-founders, and all of the words here are important. Solutions journalism is rigorous. It relies on the investigative skills that you bring to any story, and it applies a critical eye. This is not soft journalism. It's not wishful thinking. Rather, it kind of goes beyond the important role that journalists play in reporting on social problems to, I think, expand it to an equally important role of reporting on possible solutions, critically analyzing different responses to those problems, again, with an eye toward identifying policies or places that have a proven evidence-based track record of success. And I think that approach becomes even more powerful when combined with data journalism. And for this audience, I don't need to sell anyone on the value of data journalism, how data can help you, discover better stories, tell better stories. But I do want to tell you how valuable data journalism can be in the pursuit of solutions journalism, and particularly in helping you identify what we call positive deviance. And now that may be a familiar term for some of you. I think Adam said he was once described as that. If it's not familiar to you, I know it might sound like the name, of a cheesy garage band. But in fact, positive deviants are the key to some really good solutions reporting. A positive deviant is a response to a problem that stands out from other responses because it appears to really lead to better outcomes. It is not a term you'll find in most dictionaries, so I kind of made my own dictionary entry here for you visual learners out there. Again, a response to a social problem that kind of stands out because it seems to really lead to better outcomes. And again, with evidence behind that claim there. And data certainly can provide a terrific lead to these positive deviants, because when the impact of a response can be measured with numbers, it's sort of easy to identify the high performers. So a positive deviant is an outlier, right? But, an outlier in a good way, kind of breaking away from the pack, having a better response, performing better. Still, I went ahead too far there. It can't be, a lucky break or a statistical anomaly or just sort of, demographic good fortune where I don't know, one town has really good outcomes for, health or education because everyone in town happens to be, super rich, right? It's more than just, oh, there's a better performer in the data. There's my positive deviance. What we want to find in that, when you look through data and you find, hey, this prison system, has really low recidivism, or this town has much cleaner drinking water, than similar towns. I want you to think of that outlier, that positive deviant, as basically a tip, as a starting point on a potential story. But you'll then have more reporting to do to kind of dig into it, see if there's a specific policy, a specific response behind that impressive outcome. Because ultimately, with solutions reporting, we're interested in identifying, novel approaches to problems, again, with a solid evidence-based record of success, with a real track record. So, Ronaldo or Serena, that hopefully time-tested, a sense of, wow, this really does seem to be approaching this problem in a successful way. And again, perhaps in a way that has eluded other efforts to deal with the problem. So again, data can play a terrific role in that process, kind of pointing us to better performers that are worth kind of a deeper look. And when we find these positive deviants, they can help us in this kind of grand quest to tell our readers and viewers who's doing it better. That's really, the heart of a lot of solutions reporting, a rigorous look at who is doing it better. So here in the US, it is the state that put specific protocols in place to see if they could reduce the number of women who died in childbirth. And in doing so, cut the rate of maternal mortality significantly. Great use of data showing that California's rate of maternal mortality, you can see on the slide here began kind of a clear downward trend in 2008 when they started these policies, and kind of continued, on a clear downward projection, while the rest of the country, was sort of hitting one record high after another. And the reporter here, tied this positive trend here to specific protocols, specifically aimed at reducing postpartum bleeding in women, a leading cause of death. So California instituted policies in hospitals nationwide. And you can see here it made a real difference, and made for a great solution story and protocols that other states could put in place as well and save lives. So similarly, it's a school district that found ways to reduce the achievement gap between Black students and white students. The reporter, in this case, looked at data for every school district in Alabama, looking for those schools that had shrunk that gap, and came across one in particular, Pike County, which here you can see this is in third grade math. That bottom chart cut the gap between Black students and white students in half, from 20% to 10%. And this reporter didn't know which school districts would be the better performers here, or if there would be any. But having just sort of basic literacy, analyzing the full data set, was able to find places doing it better. And then, did some reporting within Pike County, and discovered that there were, specific things that the county did, that school district did, to try to improve try to lessen that achievement gap. They protected instructional time for teachers. They promoted cultural understanding. They did more with project-based learning. At the higher grades, they built collaborations with colleges in the area. All of these areas, these responses seem to make a difference. And I think presented an excellent example of solutions journalism. So just a couple of stories there, kind of showing how a focus on positive deviance, on solutions reporting, can lead, I think, to some terrific journalism, kind of putting a spotlight on concrete responses that are making a difference, and making a difference for the better. And I will tell you, in my long career in journalism, I don't think either of those stories would be the sort of story that I would have been interested in pursuing. I mean, I had this very sort of classic approach that, if I'm diving into a data set, I'm looking for the bad actors there, the poor performers, right? They're the ones that kind of need the spotlight shown on them to make improvements. But here's the thing: if we can use data to help uncover the bad actors, the poor performers, and we should, we can also use data to find the places that are doing better. And I think that will make for better journalism. So I'm not telling anyone to, pay no attention to the poor performers. But I think including the places that are doing better, those positive deviants, I think including those in your reporting will elevate your story. And let me show you how. Here's some charts on a few nations and their newly reported cases of COVID-19 over time. And I know there are people watching that, this is not news at all too. You can see these countries clearly have very troubling trends. I mean, look at Italy, I guess Portugal as well, to an extent that, early spike, they seem to have it under control. And then months later, just completely lost control. And what's going on in these countries is an important story. It's good journalism. You want to sort of hold their feet to the fire. Are there things they did or didn't do that allowed this to get out of control? So I think that's good journalism, but maybe better journalism if you can investigate if maybe it didn't have to be that way, if there might have been a better way. So let me add a fourth country here, and I'll tell you, I wanted to add a country in Europe, and there really are no positive deviants on the continent. But let's go a little east and look at what the curve looks like in Kazakhstan. You can see a couple of spikes in the early months and one gigantic spike. And I don't know, there may be some issues with data here. But over the last couple of months, a bit of an uptick recently, but nothing like the massive climbs in these other countries. Now, I don't know how good the data are in Kazakhstan or what's going on there, but I think if you put some, rigorous reporting into what officials did there, not taking anyone's word for it, but really investigating, were there policies put in place that made a difference, that led to these better outcomes, that saved lives? If that were the case, I think you've got yourself a story with better accountability and some possible ideas for a better path forward, kind of rather than solely focusing on the bad performers. And these COVID data, I think, also point to an important tenet in solutions journalism. If a problem is not well known, not well recognized in a community, then reporting sort of solely on that problem, bringing it to light, I think that can be important and meaningful journalism. But if a problem is widely known, if everyone in the community knows, there's a terrible problem with homelessness, or that the local waterways are polluted, or that the public housing for senior citizens is in terrible disrepair, if all of that is kind of widely understood, or what we see here, that yes, the COVID rates are out of control, if that's well known, then I'm not sure there's much value in kind of yet another story telling reporters or telling readers a depressing fact that they already know. And I think that's where solutions reporting on who's doing it better is truly valuable, kind of taking audiences beyond the problem they already know about and putting the spotlight on responses that are making a difference. I think that just makes for better journalism. So I think when you do solutions journalism, when you find those positive deviants, I think it elevates your work in a number of different ways. I think it is better accountability journalism. If you show that a problem can be successfully addressed, that there are places that have found a way to do it better, I think you take away the ability of the poor performers to make excuses for that poor performance. Hey, there's nothing we can do about it. Mistakes happen. We've done all we can. Excuses like that just don't hold a lot of weight if you've shown other places that can do it better, that have avoided mistakes. And number two, I think it offers a possible path forward that communities can rely on. Rather than simply kind of wallow in failure, right? This sort of news fatigue that we struggle with. It can highlight, again, carefully vetted policies that can lead to better outcomes and that might be replicable to other communities. So it's not advocacy. It's clear-eyed. When there are limitations, we include the limitations. If it's very expensive or it only works, under certain circumstances, something like that, you're definitely going to want to include that. But it nevertheless, vets possible ways forward that other communities could use. So in that sense, I think it's true public service journalism. And then lastly, it gives readers and viewers, I think, the kind of journalism that studies consistently show that they want and that they're willing to pay for, frankly, and subscribe for. Stories that offer, some degree of hope, not stories that sugarcoat problems, but stories that pair in-depth reporting and coverage of problems with equally in-depth, rigorous coverage of solutions to those problems or responses to those problems that might lead to solutions. So in that sense, I think it's kind of good sustainable journalism. So think about the data sets that you've worked with that might lend themselves to positive deviance, issues around criminal justice and corrections, any reporting around health, certainly, community issues around pollution and the like. When there are bad actors, there may be places that are doing better and would lend itself. Education, certainly. There's an enormous amount of data on education. Any area that there are disparities worth reporting on, I think, are better if you include responses that seem to be working a little bit better. So I want to wrap up here with some great advice that I got from a very, very wise well, actually, I'm sorry. First, before I do that, if you want to find out more about solutions journalism, take down this URL here, learninglab.solutionsjournalism.org. Our basic toolkit is available in 17 languages. Some of the languages scrolling here, some will look familiar. A great way to dig in if you want to learn more about it. Or want to, if you're already familiar with it and kind of get a little refresher there. A ton of resources available, starting with this toolkit in multiple languages. So now we're going to wrap up with that final thought from this very wise fortune cookie that I got years ago in a Chinese restaurant. This actual fortune cookie that I got and kind of have carried it around with me for years to, put the data that you have uncovered to beneficial use. And I think it's only once I started working with solutions journalism that I sort of truly understood, what the universe was trying to tell me with this. So now I share this wisdom with you. Yes, pursue data. And when you do find kind of a great data set, put it to beneficial use by recognizing the value of data and identifying positive deviants that can help you then produce strong solutions journalism. And I think that's going to bring us to the last slide. You can see my email address is here, some Twitter handles, but also a link here, a bit.ly link to a handout with some more information about solutions reporting that I encourage everyone to download. So again, just bit.ly SJN-NIS 2020 will get you to that PDF. And my email address is here. If you are interested in doing more with data and solutions reporting, by all means, reach out to me. I'm always happy to help. And with that, I thank you all for listening. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Hi, Matthew. How are you?
Good. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. We have a question from Umar Hassan. Umar, let me pull it here. Yeah, Oman asks, when looking for good news solutions journalism stories using data, how important is it that the subject remains a pivotal part of the issue or story you are covering?
So with solutions reporting, it's important that if you find certainly if you mean a subject, meaning like an individual that is, doing something good, we tend not to focus on individuals, that we're more interested in the process. So if there is a response, we want sort of very clear reporting on how the response was implemented and the impact that it had. So if you are writing about homelessness and you find there's another community used to have the same problem you did, but things have gotten much better, the focus is really going to be not so much on who was involved or the agency. It's the policy. This was the response. This is how it was put in place, and this is the impact that it seemed to have, that the data at least provides some evidence of it having. I hope that answered the question.
I think it does. Thank you, Matthew. We don't have more questions from our audience, but yeah, thank you so much for being here today with us in a special day like is for you, Thanksgiving in the US. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. It was my pleasure.
you.